Welcome everybody, and can I take this opportunity to welcome Andy Vincent, who's the new director, to Cabinet. Bit of a baptism of fire today, but it's good. I think you met most of the staff because I think most of them are here. So yeah, on that one. So item 1 then, apologies. I'm not aware that there are any apologies. I need to inform the committee that item 18 has also been withdrawn when we get to that, which is actually in the pink. Any declarations of interest? Only one declaration of interest, which is myself. I have an OSI, as I have a family member who plays sport for an organisation as a grant. I've applied for a dispensation with the monitoring officer and been granted that, so I've got a dispensation on both section 25 of the report and the council budget 26-27 medium term financial plan 26-27-29. So I have a dispensation for this meeting tonight and for full council. It takes us on then to record of decisions. I'm quite happy to agree the record of decisions. Both said, all those in favour, thank you very much. And then issues arise from overview and scrutiny, I'm not aware there are any. Okay, takes us on then to item 4, biodiversity duty report. Who's presenting that? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. This report presents the District Council's Biodiversity Duty Report and the Action Plan. The Environment Act 2021 strengthened the biodiversity duty in the Natural Environment and Communities Act, so there's now a general biodiversity objective for the Council to conserve and enhance biodiversity. To comply with the duty, planning authorities must consider what action the authority can take to further the general biodiversity objective. The actions, the Council is required to take 4 steps to meet its biodiversity duty. These are to consider what action it takes to conserve and enhance biodiversity, so that's to consider what we can do in exercising functions, determine which policies and objectives are appropriate to comply with the duty, act to deliver policies and objectives, and publish a report on actions taken and future plans, and that's this report. The actions will help the national delivery of the Council's government's environmental improvement plan. Some of the targets are summarised in the biodiversity duty report itself, but one key example is for the decline in species abundance to be halted by 2030. Objectives and actions were agreed by this committee in 2024 whenever they did their initial considerations of the duty. In summary, these included to ensure the Council contributes to the preparation of the local nature recovery strategy, to secure biodiversity conservation and enhancement through planning approvals, including biodiversity net gain, to ensure biodiversity is considered within Council plans, policies, strategies and decision making where relevant, to consider the potential for Council-owned land or managed land or buildings to be conserved and enhance biodiversity, and in the Council's work with partnerships, communities and volunteers to educate, advise and raise awareness of biodiversity. In the proposed action plan in part 3 of this document, these objectives stay the same and there's new actions proposed. Some of them look very similar to the previous ones because they continue and are ongoing, and many sections of the Council have contributed to the new action plan. The recommendations ask you to note the biodiversity duty report, that's Appendix 1, to agree the objectives and actions in the report, and to delegate authority to the Director of Housing and Place to finalise the biodiversity duty report, including minor factual, editorial, presentation or grammatical points, and progress with the delivery of the objectives and actions. Thank you.
Very much. Some questions? Councillor Biggs.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I've got a question really on habitat monitoring. And it's been established. I just want to know how long we've established that monitoring program and whether developers are fully aware of all their responsibilities in that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've As biodiversity net gain has been introduced into the planning system, it's been in place since the beginning of 2024. It's taking quite a while to get through the system as it's a post-consent requirement. So the details are submitted via condition. We've set up a system whereby we are collecting contributions to monitor the delivery of biodiversity net gain on site. And because the regulations require the council for significant biodiversity, significant on-site biodiversity net gain, that we monitor the delivery of that for a period of 30 years. So we have developed a schedule of fees and charges to charge developers so that we can cover the costs of monitoring over the 30 years. That is published on our website, and generally developers are agreeing to pay those contributions. Okay.
I'm glad they're agreeing to pay their contribution in that sense. I welcome that. This report covers a very wide-ranging gamut now of the responsibilities in what we do. But I think for me, there's some key parts in there that are really welcoming, where it identifies the uniqueness of our district with our coastal areas, our chalk grasslands, our chalk rivers. There, it's so welcoming to see that, you know, that is really getting clearly identified. And the other area that I'm really pleased to see in it is about the habitat banks, where we've established one and we've got 5 more of that, and those are so important for us to have real meaning to our biodiversity and how we apply it and how we make it work. So for me, I really welcome this report. The other aspect in there, which is really nice as well, I think, is it recognises the Dover in Bloom and our winner as a large coastal town, our biodiversity. And I know we're going on to, that's been recommended for the RHS for a national award this year, so it's nominated there. So all those things gathered in this report are so positive to our district and really step out the clear identity of our district and all the gains in it. So for me, I really welcome it. I really appreciate all the work. I really appreciate everything in there. So I'd like to propose that we accept this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I see in the actions, one of the actions is biodiversity training. What is that going to look like? Because we're, as the officer stated, we're in the very early days of biodiversity net gain. It's been established. So I'm interested in what training is in place or proposed. I'm interested also, we're collecting monitoring fees, but what happens if the BNG fails? How do we reinstate that, or is there a mechanism to reinstate that? And off-site provision is inevitable because not all sites will be able to accommodate it. Are we going to keep the off-site provision in our district? I think that's really quite important if we can. And thank you, that's it.
Thank you very much. We've got 2 actions in the action plan. One is for, so it's action 3.2, which looks at education needs for councillors and council employees, including exploration of potential short compulsory training for staff. Currently, our ecologist has been doing training with officers, and we'll continue doing that. And as any changes to BNG, well, we expect some updates to the regulations, then we'll keep them up to date. And it's an ongoing training. And part of the action here is to explore further training for councillors as well. Both on biodiversity duty generally and BNG itself. Your second point about if I take these off-site, yes, our local plan, it includes a criteria which asks developers to look at development within the district and sort of neighbouring authorities before looking to the sort of the wider character area, which is the item which is in the metric. So we do ask developers to look at keeping biodiversity as close as possible to the district, if at all possible, because that's where the needs are if there's been a loss. Second bit.
Yeah, and your question about the we're collecting monitoring fees, but what do you do if the habitat fails? So as part of the biodiversity net gain requirements, as in order to discharge the condition, the applicant has to submit something that's called a habitat management and monitoring plan. And within that, that sets out how they plan to deliver the biodiversity net gain and how they plan to manage and monitor that over 30 years. And as part of the schedule to collect the monitoring fees, they will also be required to submit to us monitoring reports at specific intervals over the 30 years. And so that will enable us to monitor regularly how the biodiversity net gain is being delivered. And we can then, at those points, if we feel like that's not being delivered in accordance with the how it's meant to be, we can ask them to rectify it at that stage. So that is what the plan is. We are not at that position yet because we're still in the early stages. So that will be regularly reviewed as well to ensure that works over the time period.
Thank you for this work. I just want to echo that it's highly detailed and very wide-ranging. Can I just ask about the local nature recovery strategy, which was prepared by Kenton Medway? Am I right? And can I just want to be clear about the wording in Action 1.1 and 1.2. In 1.1, it says continue to be involved and cooperate with KCC who are preparing the local nature recovery strategy. But then in 1.2, it says that it is finalised. We will be producing further actions once it is finalised in 2025. But then it says that it's been published in November 2025, only recently been published. So there's no progress on any actions in 1.2 so far. So it might just be that I'm reading it incorrectly. But can I just have some clarification on that?
Yes, Dover District Council is a supporting authority in the preparation of the local nature recovery strategy, and that obviously was that sort of initial tranche of work was completed in November 2025. The work is ongoing because they're producing guidance on how to implement the strategy, and also I imagine they'll be doing lots of detailed work on implementation planning and monitoring for it. So we'll continue to be a supporting authority for that.
And in Action 1.2, it says that there's a new Action 4.1, which links in with the Parks and Open Spaces strategy that's being written, but that's not actually going to commence its writing until 2027. So is there anything that we're doing in between now and 2027, when that strategy starts to be written, that will continue to support the local nature recovery strategy?
Yes, and currently the main task is to look at the mapping that's come from the local nature recovery strategy and work out whether we need to have hold that internally, and what's the best way for our development management team to use it whenever they're looking at sites. And the action you were looking at, that's going to focus on considering how the local nature recovery strategy has an impact on council-owned sites. So how would that give us advice on the opportunities for biodiversity in the future whenever any work occurs on those sites.
So actually that work that's going to start now will actually feed into the Parks and Open Spaces strategy.
Yes.
Yeah, lovely. Okay.
Any further questions? No, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Takes on then to item 5, arrangements for Dover District Council Community Grant Scheme.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to seek approval for the administration of an allocation of funding to Dover District Council's Community Grant Scheme ahead of the 2026-27 grant scheme rounds. Ordinarily, 22,500 is included in the annual revenue budget, as well as 7,500 from the council's share of the Dover District Lotto scheme, which is administered by the Community Development Team, and £70,000 from the special revenue projects, which, as highlighted in the Dover District Council medium-term financial plan, which is due to go to full council on Wednesday, the 4th of March. Due to the level of grant funding available this year, it's proposed that we once again administer both a summer and winter grant, splitting each pot to £50,000 each round. I'm just going to pass over to Chloe because we are looking at some changes to the scheme for the 26-27 rounds.
Thank you, Becky. So as Becky mentioned, we're looking at obviously 2 rounds, so a summer and a winter round of £50,000 per round. We are proposing this year that both of those are a general community grant scheme. So that means removing the winter round as a cost of living scheme and having them as 2 general community grant schemes. We're also we now have, or we're proposing that we'll have 7 panel members. The reason for that is obviously the independent group now makes up 10% or just over of the council's board, so we're proposing that a member from the independent group will be a panel member. We've met with Councillor Powell as the leader of that group, and he's proposed that Councillor Zossada will be the person that sits on the group. She has previous experience with that as well.
Just to add finally that previously last year we did increase the grants from 2,000 to 5,000 per allocation, so each group could apply up to £5,000. We did find that there was some groups that were applying for sake of sake, so they were trying to find things to apply for, and we didn't feel that the applications were such high quality, and we were having we had over, I think it was 100 applications for the first round, so we are proposing to bring the grants back down to 2,500 to each round, and we feel this will be more beneficial for the groups. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Councillor White.
I just welcome the report. That's what I was going to say in support, because it was quite difficult last year. So I can see that, you know, you've done a very good evaluation of the situation, and this looks a very good way forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, obviously we're oversubscribed every year, which I think shows the demand out there. I think a number of councillors are concerned that, you know, certain organisations rely on this more than once, but with is it the resilience?
This resilience fund.
Easy for you to say. What impact is that likely to have, and how do we know at this stage how that's going to be administered? Because it could impact on some of those that apply to us also that traditionally have got funding quite rightly for the service they deliver.
For those that aren't aware, the Household Support Fund that supports food and fuel poverty is coming to an end on the 31st of March this year. That is being replaced by a central government fund of the Crisis Resilience Fund. It is going to be very different to Household Support Fund. It will still be food and fuel, but it'll be around crisis as well. Historically, through the Household Support Fund, we have given grants to organisations that Councillor Mills has referred to, and they have supported the residents directly. At the moment, we don't know what our allocation from KCC will be. Once that's received, we have had internal conversations on what that could look like going forward, but there could potentially be a drop in allocations to the organisation. So then we would expect them to apply for us for the community grant scheme. However, with the Crisis Resilience Fund, that was more around food and fuel support, but they did come to us for administration costs as well.
And do we know what the timescale? Because I mean, that is an important grant that an awful lot of organisations rely on. Do we know the timescale on when we'll know, I suppose, what our share of the cake is?
So KCC have received their allocation from the central government, and they have to have a delivery plan in by July. So we have been having meetings with KCC, and I believe they're looking to go to Cabinet imminently, and then we should receive an award letter. But because this will include a cash fair scheme, we're not sure if they're going to look to hold that centrally. But on all the meetings we've attended, we have made it clear that we would like a district allocation also, so we can still support residents locally. We've also been working with the groups that could be affected, and they are aware that the scheme is coming to an end.
So we've made it very clear that we think, and I'm sure that's mirrored by a number of other districts, that a district allocation from KCC would be most welcome rather than them holding it all at the moment.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks very much. So we've had it report with no more questions. Sorry, Councillor Biggs.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at 5.2 in the report, which makes a reference to seems to be the frustration with grants that are to a specific theme, and this seems to be indicating that that's creating a problem. And I just wonder if, I mean, obviously we've seen from the previous national government that they did specific themes for things that happened in Dover that then subsequently had to be removed because they were specific themes that weren't appropriate. So this whole thing is been a contentious thing previously. So I'm just wondering, is there any mechanism for to feed back that these themes are frustrating, trying to find projects that fit with these themes? So I don't know how that works, but it seems a shame that if there's things out there that we can't take advantage of because they've been so specific. So I don't know whether there's opportunities there, please.
Just to clarify, that was relating to cost of living. So obviously when administration changed, we had a cost of living plan, and that's why we had a cost of living round. But over the last 2 years, it's been quite problematic, and I know panel members would agree with me. Some of the grants that we had for cost of living were just trying to find ways to make it back to cost of living. So that's why we've changed it back to a general theme, so that anyone can apply rather than having a cost of living outcome. And with the household support fund that I spoke about, that's changing to crisis resilience, there will be support there for cost of living. So it's more around what we've previously done. Going forward, it will be more generalised.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, are we happy to accept the recommendations as outlined in relation to option 1? So that's moved, seconded. Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Quarterly complaints report. Rebecca, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. We're continuing to make a number of improvements to the complaints database for what's turned out to be a significant overhaul. The complaints team are working closely with the technology and resilience team, and when finished, it will improve the functionality of the Power BI dashboards and enable more detailed analysis of the complaint data. As part of the work being undertaken, a manual check was undertaken as part of the data cleansing process, and we've identified an issue with date calculation in very specific circumstances that impacted 2 of the overdue stage 1 complaints for housing repairs. In these specific circumstances, the system set an incorrect target date of 11 days. So while the complaint was responded to outside of the 10 working day period target, it was responded to by the target date set by the system. The length of time the housing options complaint was overdue has also been reduced, though that was also still overdue. We have worked with technology and resilience, and we've identified the issue, and it has now been corrected. We have checked the previous 2 quarters data and found no previous reoccurrence of this issue. We've also completed work on our Ombudsman complaints tracker, which now includes all those cases that were closed at initial inquiries that we've not been reporting on previously. This then adds a more comprehensive picture of the nature of the Ombudsman complaints and how they're being dealt with. The headlines for Q3 are complaints at stage 1 continued broadly on trend with the previous quarters and are projected to come in only slightly up year on year if current levels continue for Q4. For stage 2 complaints, we have already received more than 3 quarters than we did in total last year, and it looks like we will for the first time exceed 100 stage 2 complaints. However, this is an average of 2 a week, and to put this in context, the ratio of stage 1 to stage 2 complaints is projected to end the year at 5 to 1, down from 6 to 1 last year. In respect of stage 1 performance, the headlines are that we have improved significantly on our stage 1 response times. Last quarter, we had 7 complaints that were overdue and only 3 this quarter, and as mentioned, 2 of those the service did believe they were on target. More work still needs to be done, but the overall narrative is one of improvement, and I'm hopeful for Q4. In respect of the areas of complaint, housing repairs is the largest area, accounting for nearly half of all complaints this quarter. David Parish, who sends his apologies as he can't be here tonight, has provided me with the following information in relation to the heating hot water issue. DDC remain in regular dialogue with Shore Serve Compliance South. Average call wait time has reduced from 12 to 15 minutes in December and January to 3 minutes 51 seconds for the week commencing 16th February and 56 seconds for the week commencing 23rd of February. The improvement is due to the DDC contract now having 3 new call handlers, taking the total number to 10, who monitor the calls alongside other local contracts that SCS have. The contract remains committed to delivering a high standard of service across both servicing and breakdowns. As expected, breakdown volumes increased during the winter months, which can lead to a corresponding rise in complaints. Despite the seasonal pressures, SCS have continued to maintain strong performance levels. The complaint manager at SCS is consistently responsive and works collaboratively with the compliance team to resolve issues promptly and effectively. The working relationship between DDC and SCS is strengthened significantly, supported by regular toolbox talks now held at the council offices. These sessions have helped engineers to build direct relationships with members of the compliance team, enabling them to seek immediate guidance where needed. This direct communication route has contributed to quicker resolution of complex or problematic repairs, reducing delays that might otherwise occur through email-based approval processes. So that was a comment from David. So it should be noted, as mentioned, that Q3 does normally see an increase in heating hot water issues, as it covers the time that central heating is often used again after the summer. But we will continue to monitor this area of complaints and liaise with the service directly where we can be of assistance to them. We break down the main reasons for complaints at paragraph 5.5 to 5.10 of the report. We have also set out for the first time a breakdown of the outcome of the complaints by reason. In terms of the outcomes, the rollout of the new stage 1 complaints template is going well and is making services come to a determination as to whether the complaint is upheld, partly upheld or not upheld. This, we believe, is the reason for the increase in the number of partly upheld complaints at stage 1, as before the template, services tend to view complaints in a more binary upheld, not upheld term. At stage 2, outcomes remain broadly consistent with previous quarters. We had 3 new Ombudsman cases opened in Q3, 1 closed after initial inquiries, which was the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, and 2 still open with the Housing Ombudsman. It is not unusual though for the Housing Ombudsman complaints due to the nature of them and the complexity of them to take longer for the Housing Ombudsman to assess. In terms of lessons learned, there are some practical positive actions that should help future complaints. We are looking at making presentation to managers of forum internally on the importance of meeting the deadlines and of the complaint process and learning from complaints. Additionally, we want to drive the better capture of compliments received by services, as we acknowledge we are predominantly only really sort of collecting the negatives. Overall, given the number of contacts the council receives every day, complaints remain a relatively small proportion in comparison, but we do not remain complacent about this and we will work with the services to try and improve that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I commend the report to the Cabinet. Something that the report can't say, but is a fact, is that how we deal with complaints this current year is a complete step change over and above how we dealt with them before. It's a complete turnaround, and credit to everybody in Rebecca's team for making it work. With stage 1 complaints, we're always going to get them, and direction of travel seems to be that we're going to get more and more coming through. Stage 2, which is what I'm mostly interested in, is how we deal with them. And what I'm observing is that people are more honest. Some because they are more honest, some because they're made to be more honest through the diligence of the team dealing with the complaints. The other thing we have to keep an eye on is the complaint generated because of an internal fault or failing, or an external, such as the engineers who deal with the heating complaints, etc. So I am pleased, I'm satisfied, and I do commend Rebecca's team for the work they've done this year, because they've put in a tremendous effort, and it's one that you can't put into a report, especially when you're writing it yourself, that it really is to be praised. So thank you very much, and I commend the reports.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Councillor Biggs.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking at the charts 1.1 on service request and service request for 2020, 24, 25, 25, 26. So I'm kind of, obviously those figures are quite different. So I don't really know. I wonder if you can give some background of why there's such a big difference in those figures.
Thank you. I mean, the honest reason is we were not collecting that data, particularly in 24-25. It's as a result of the new database that we introduced in January 24 that we've improved a lot of our data capture and service requests, because they're not something the Ombudsman actually monitors. They define, but they don't monitor. We had put more priority on the stage 1 and stage 2 data when we first set up the database. I would say that these numbers for service requests are largely relevant because most of the service requests go direct to the services themselves. These are the people that, because we're trying to funnel people into the complaint system to ensure that everybody who wants to make a complaint can make a complaint, we are picking up more of those that would perhaps have normally contacted the service directly about it. So the reason for the change is increased monitoring, largely from what we had last year.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I guess as you identifying, a lot of these go obviously direct to the head of service, etc., or the service that's concerned. So I'm just wondering, will this carry on, or how can we address that? Because presumably the difference between a service request isn't really a complaint, but I don't know how the process, how we identify that, how we make this more relevant, so they're not service requests, they're actually complaints, so we're dealing with the complaint service.
Through you, Chair, I think the fundamental issue with service requests is they're not complaints. Service requests are, my tap's broken, can you fix it? Complaints are, my tap's broken, I asked you to fix it, you haven't fixed it. So with service requests, they're the bread and butter contacts the council has, where we have tenants, where we're providing services, we're collecting waste bins, all that sort of thing. So a service request for bins, for example, is you missed my bin, you can report it on the system, we log it, we get the freighter out there, we pick up your bin, done. The complaint is, I logged it and nothing's happened. So in terms of service requests, I would say that the Ombudsman defines them. It defines them very clearly. It's in our complaints policy as to the different definitions between a complaint and a service request. Service requests are just contacts. They're just the initial things. I want something from the council. The council, I believe, has not done it, or I want something. It's a response to repair, and the council's my landlord, so it's the council that provides me that service. The message I think to be most concerned about is the stage 1, stage 2s. Most of the service requests, the bread and butter ones, we get thousands of them. These are the ones of things our tenants, contact us, our public contact us. They do not indicate a fault. They just indicate they need something from us. The complaints, however, indicate where there has been a breakdown of some sort. So I would say, in all honesty, don't worry about the service requests. Don't focus on them for the purpose of this report. Focus on the stage 1, stage 2 and the Ombudsman, because that progression, stage 1, stage 2 Ombudsman, will tell you where there are problems, because you will see issues escalate up. This is obviously why when our monthly meetings with the portfolio holder, we have the stage 2 officer to sit down with him and go through that so we can identify any trends and issues that are emerging. The service requests are literally just that. Somebody wants something from the council, they've asked for it. In 99% of the cases, we just provide it. Now, because we want to capture the information, because we want it as easy as possible to someone to make a complaint, which is again in accordance with Ombudsman guidance, we are always going to pick up service requests, and we're probably going to pick up more as we go along, because we're trying to make it as easy as possible to log a complaint. But they aren't complaints. We don't necessarily want service requests to be complaints, because we want to deal with them at the point of contact. We refer the service request direct to the service. We ask them to resolve them within 10 working days. Most of the time, and take waste services. Waste services often resolve their service requests within hours of our referring them to them. I cannot praise the waste service team actually highly enough into how they handle these service requests. So basically, focus on the stage 1, focus on the stage 2. The service requests are a very small part of a very big picture that we're not capturing, because it is literally where people are contacting services directly in most cases. I hope that helps, Chair.
Any further questions? No, it's been moved. Is it seconded? Sorry. Okay, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Takes us on then to strategic performance report, item 7. Susie.
Thank you, Chairman. The report outlines the strategic performance for Q3, which is the period of the 1st of October through to the 31st of December 2025. Within the report, there is a summary of the highlights and lowlights. That's on page 5 of the Appendix 1 or 88 of the main Cabinet report. As you'll see from there, we've tried to just show with ticks when obviously it's a headline achievement, and then an area of concern. There's a few around the housing. Again, some of those are outside of our control, but it's worth noting. Comments have been provided for individual strategic performance indicators by the relevant head of service. And then I'm happy to take any questions. However, as always, may need to take it away to the relevant head of service if I'm unable to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor White.
Yeah, thank you for this. It looks very good. What is good is the responsiveness of the council. There was concern about electrical compliance, and that has been turned around, and we're now above our target. And I'm assuming that the fire risk assessments, which have been noted when we come back next time, that will have been turned around. So yes, I'm pleased with this, and I'm happy to note it.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wright has touched on the fire risk assessments. I actually know what the answer is, because David can't be with us this evening to answer it, but I did wanted to check before we entered the meeting. The number of this is SP005C. We've got 100% of our fire risk assessments up to date, and within section D of the same SP005D, we've got more actions. Are you able to respond on David's behalf, please, Susie?
Yes, so the question here is mainly around probably the language used in terms of the outstanding FRAs. Obviously, the assessments are happening all the time, and we're constantly generating new actions. The outstanding includes any that could have happened today, right the way through to those that are overdue. So in future, David has agreed that what we'll do is we'll actually show which ones are overdue. So as an example, although by the end of December the figure was 787, we currently have 616 outstanding FRA actions as of today, of which 251 are overdue. And that probably as an indicator shows better how we are working towards making sure we keep those fire risk assessments down. You know, we're never going to get it to zero because we're always going to generate new actions. But obviously from a service perspective, the important bit is, you know, are we overdue and what are we doing about those? So we'll look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And are you able to comment on the outstanding, if any, are a material risk?
Yep. Again, David's words, I haven't got much detail. He's put none of the actions are high or substantial risk. And if it's okay, Chairman, what I will do is make sure we update this comment before it gets published. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, it's been moved. Is it seconded? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Takes us then on to item 8, which is financial update third quarter.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. So this is the quarter 3 financial update. The main headlines to note are the general fund is currently forecasting a surplus of £847,000 for the year. The main variants in this quarter are a reduction in the forecast delivery of savings in year and further pressure on homelessness budgets. These are offset by salary savings and additional planning income. For the HRA, we are forecasting £871,000 surplus for the year. Again, main variances include salary savings from staff associated with the HRA, alongside increased rental income from the new properties that we're starting to see come on stream. Our capital programme continues to be fully financed for our existing commitments, and it's always worth a note that the main risks for each area are detailed at the end of each section for review. Additionally, I'm pleased to advise that all statutory recommendations from the Section 24 report presented to Council last year have now been closed. Some of these areas have new key recommendations from the Auditor's annual report presented to governance in accordance with sort of normal business, and these were presented to governance alongside the 24-25 statement of accounts last month. These will continue to be monitored and updated accordingly, but really pleased to see the Section 24 recommendations closed. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. 6 months ago, the outturn was looking less positive by a substantial amount than it is today. So we were in a fortunate position that it's turned around. I'm very, very pleased with that. And I recommend the report to Cabinet.
Any further questions? No question. It's been moved. Is it seconded? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Moves on then to the Section 25 report.
Thank you. So the Section 25 report, as previously presented in February, accompanies the draft budget and medium-term financial plan. It draws members' attention to the main factors to be considered when progressing the budget through the process, as detailed at 2.4 and previously briefed at February Cabinet and scrutiny. Also draw attention again to members' responsibilities as detailed in Section 3 and the process and governance that we followed to get to this point.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Nee.
Thank you. I recommend the report. Something I didn't mention in the last item, but it's significant for this, is that we've satisfied the auditors so that we've got confidence going forward that we're doing the right strategy. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Takes on then to Council Budget 26-27.
So this is to present the final 26-27 budget and medium-term financial plan papers. Since presentation to Cabinet and scrutiny in February, the following changes have been made to the draft budget and medium-term financial plan. Those main changes being that the general fund budget has been amended to include a revised projected outturn as just reported as at 31st of December, which increased the 25-26 surplus from 685 to 847,000. The 26-27 budget has moved from a deficit forecast to a £32,000 surplus due to increase in projected business rates relating to the renewable energy income that we retain following the completion of our NDR1 return. We did also see a reduction in the final settlement of £672,000 from the revenue support grant due to a revised approach from government to the treatment of pooling returns. However, this was offset by 672,000 adjustment support grant that was put through due to those last minute changes in the final settlement that would have been difficult for any small district council to absorb at such a late time. All precepts have now been received from KCC and Fire and all parish towns and parishes, and the council tax resolution and associated annexes have all been completed and included. Capital, treasury management and investment strategies and the minimal revenue provision statement have been included, and service annexes have been amended to reflect the new organisational structure with our new director. So at this point now, Cabinet are asked to approve the grants to organisations as set out in Annex 9, subject to Council approving the full budget, and then approve the various Cabinet recommendations produced at the end of the sections and summarise the Annex 10 to the main MTFP appendix. And finally, Cabinet are asked to recommend the full budget to Council for approval on Wednesday.
Thank you, Chair. It's a prudent budget and it's been through a scrutiny process. Alterations have been made, updated as necessary. One of the things that I think is very pleasing to see is that we're able to get the smoothing reserve back to 4 million, because we have got LGR coming up. We have got financing issues going forward. So with that, I recommend this to Cabinet.
On then to making the Langdon Neighbourhood Development Plan.
Thank you. Good evening. Langdon Parish Council have been working very hard and have produced a neighbourhood development plan for their parish. This plan has been subject to public consultation and an independent examination, the results of which were reported to Cabinet in December, where it was recommended that the Council agree the examiner's modifications and that the plan met all basic conditions and could proceed to a referendum. That referendum was held on the 19th of February and the result was positive, with 103 votes in favour and 16 against. Regulations require a neighbour plan to be made, which is adopted, where the referendum result is over 50% in favour within 8 weeks of that referendum. Therefore, this report is recommending that Cabinet recommend to full Council to make the Langdon Neighbour Development Plan contained in Appendix 1 and its supporting design guide at Appendix 2 as part of the Council's development plan to be used to determine planning applications in Langdon Parish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that? Councillor Biggs.
Yeah, not really a question, just really echoing what the officer said in terms of the referendum and the overwhelming support for this, and the process as outlined has been very robust, and having the I think everybody who's been involved in this, and I'd like to thank everybody who's involved in this, that they've done an excellent job of demonstrating, for me, local democracy in action. They've been able to identify the areas that were important to them. It's gone through due process. It's been examined. Those things have been taken on board. They've been adopted. So I think, for me, it's really interesting, and I think it fit very well with the ambitions of the district in terms of identifying the elements of the natural and the historic environment and identifying those and putting the right emphasis on those. So I would like to propose this because I think it's been an excellent piece of work, everybody involved, and I think it should be commended.
Thank you. Any others? Observation or questions? No, it's been moved. Is it seconded? Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Takes us on then to item 12, updated tenancy agreement.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks Cabinet approval of the draft updated tenancy agreement and to serve a preliminary notice of variation in respect of the updated tenancy conditions. In 2025, a review of the current tenancy agreement was carried out. Prior to this, the last review took place in 2013-14, so a review was overdue. Going forward, reviews will take place every 5 years. The review was carried out involving teams across the council and included a consultation event for members on the 8th of September 25. Updates have been made to reflect legislative and regulatory changes. In addition, changes have been made to ensure the document is clear and easy for tenants to understand their rights and responsibilities. The council is obliged to follow a strict legal process when it wants to make changes to a tenancy agreement, and now that the document has been drafted, the next step is to issue a preliminary notice of variation to tenants to allow them to comment on those changes. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Brivio.
I think you've answered my first question, which was what's the reason for updating the tenancy agreement at this point in time, but you're saying it's long overdue. So I'll go on to another question. Which stakeholders and partners have been involved in developing the draft tenancy agreement?
Yes, so internally, housing services, the teams within housing services, but also property assets were involved from the inception of reviewing the tenancy agreement. We've also taken the tenancy agreement or aspects of the tenancy agreement sections to the tenant consultative group for their views and feedback on the wording on sections within it. We've also asked them questions with regards to sections that might not make sense to tenants and how we can improve the wording. We've also reached out to other departments within the council where there is something within the tenancy agreement that pertains to the service area, for example, waste. And yes, so those are the areas that we've reached out to. Okay, also legal as well, just like to mention.
Lovely. Mike, do you want to do yours? Sorry, Mike, I jumped. Sorry. It's Mike. I'm waiting for the chair. I jumped onto my question.
Thank you, Chair. So if I were a tenant, what would be the direct benefit to me having the updated agreement? And the other side of the coin, if I were a tenant, what would I kick against in the new tenancy agreement?
So the benefits of the updated tenancy agreement are that we've tried to make it as simpler as possible. So, for example, section 2 of the agreement is a table that lays out the rights of tenants. The previous or the current tenancy agreement, it did have a section right at the end of the tenancy agreement that told them their rights, but it was written in such a way that it wasn't very clear. So when we've done some kind of testing with our tenants group, it was agreed that a table format with simple kind of iconography would work better. We can always add detail regarding the rights of tenants on our webpage. We already do have that information on there. We're also working on a tenant handbook that would work alongside the tenancy agreement. Some more detail would be contained within that too. And we also have various policies and strategies that also contain information with regards to tenants' rights. To answer your second question, where tenants might kick back on the tenancy agreement, there are some changes within there, probably namely one of the ones is with regards to pets and the management of pets. So in the current tenancy agreement, it's I don't know the wording off by heart, but it's something along the lines of that you only require permission to keep a pet if you don't have access to like a garden or an outside area attached to your home. But under the new tenancy agreement, it would be all tenants, regardless of what property you own. The simple fact being that it's to help us better manage pets within our properties, and also to make sure that the pets that are going into those properties are suitable for the type of property as well. Information regarding all of that would also be contained within our policy, our tenancy management policy, or tenancy and neighbourhood management policy as it will be known, because it's being updated this year. But also information will also be contained on our web pages, the tenant handbook, and also online as well.
Any other questions? The bigs.
Yeah, I'm just obviously it's good to hear that we're making things clearer and more understandable. I know that's always a challenge because obviously you've got a lot of aspects of this that you've regulatory and all that you've got to pull in. So in terms of, you talk about the tenancy handbook, so I suppose is that a physical thing that every tenant gets, or is it just on the web, or do they request it? This information, obviously, it's just how you're transmitting this information to the tenants so they can understand what their new areas, and within that, is there a comparison between what the previous tenancy situation is and what the key changes are? Because obviously people get a handbook, and I know I get books, so yeah, that's fine, but I'd really like to know what the differences are. So I don't know how you're intending to deliver that.
So currently there is a tenant handbook on our website which forms as the web pages. So the idea is that we would continue with that layout, but obviously update it and make each page clearer. There are certain pages that we probably need to include as well. But one thing that my team is working on is establishing a booklet so that there is a physical copy that tenants can be given. If they want it, it can be made available in reception, or housing officers can be provided that. We will be working with tenants on the tenant handbook as well. So again, the tenant consultative group is involved. They've been involved with that project because it's run alongside the updated tenancy agreement. So they have fed into the layout and the content of the tenant handbook as well. We're also going to be working with teams within housing too, to make sure that the information within the booklet or on our website is clear, not only to tenants but also to staff, so they can manage them. Hopefully that answers your question.
Could I also just add to that, as part of the consultation process with tenants, they will be provided with a table which shows them where changes have been made to the tenancy agreement. So what's in the current tenancy agreement, how that's changed in the new one, which should make it quite clear for tenants. They shouldn't have to go through picking out the information themselves. It should be made clear to them through that table.
Yeah, thank you. So I suppose I'm just wondering, in terms of the handbook and the information, how are we going to, or how do you deal with that in terms of obviously people who are visually impaired, you know, any kind of disability? How do you communicate? Is there mechanisms to communicate the changes to those kind of tenants?
So, as you know, we have a new website, and this will form part of the new website, and it will be easier for people with assistive technology to read these documents from the website. So we will ensure that the layout of the tenant's handbook is easy to work in conjunction with that technology, so visually impaired people can have the tenant's handbook read to them by their laptop or tablet.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually got a supplementary as well, just based on what Councillor Biggs said. The supplementary on Councillor Biggs is, would we know that we had tenants who had these impairments? But my main question is, imagine that I'm a tenant, imagine it's a quiet night on the telly and I've stumbled onto the Dover YouTube channel to see this enthralling meeting. And I'm thinking, when will this affect me? When does it kick in? What steps are going to be taken? If you let me know that as well, please.
So I can answer the second point you've raised there. So there, as Rachel mentioned, there is a legally defined process by which we can change and make changes to the tenancy agreement. The first stage is to issue this preliminary notice of variation, which we're asking your approval to do. That basically says to tenants that our intention is to make changes to your tenancy agreement, and also opens the tenant consultation. So there'll be a period of 6 to 8 weeks where we would invite tenants to feedback. They'll be provided, I think it's Appendix 4 of this report, a copy of all the changes made to the current tenancy agreement in the new one, and they'll be given information about how they can feed that back to us. Once the consultation closes, we review all of the feedback we've got, all the comments, and anything that's meaningful or glaringly obvious we would look at and then make suitable changes based on what they've said. Once we've done that, we would have had, that would be like our final version. We would then come back to Cabinet, seek approval to issue a notice of variation, and that's different to the preliminary notice because it actually says that we're going to make the changes now that we've done the consultation work with you. That notice has to be issued to tenants with at least 4 weeks prior to the new tenancy agreement coming into place. Hopefully that explains the process, and then obviously once that it's in place.
In relation to understanding tenants' vulnerabilities, if tenant has disclosed to us that they require some, I don't know, if they're blind or they're deaf or so on, and they might require a different format of a document, we flag that on the system, on their record, and we can run reports which tell us where tenants have disclosed a vulnerability to us or a disability. If they haven't, then we wouldn't have that on the system, but we are, at the moment, we're undertaking a programme of tenancy audits, and we're picking up more of this kind of data that we can add to the system to make sure that tenants are getting information in the format that's most suitable to them.
Brilliant.
This is just another question that's just actually come to me, made me think about an issue. The new tenancy agreement contains a clause regarding recycling. I particularly noticed that, and but if, I mean, we know it happens, but if tenants continue to misuse their bins, and I'm talking about where perhaps they've got a joint, a shed or something, but if tenants continue to misuse their bins, and this can be proved, and I realise there's evidence needed, would action be taken against the individual? I mean, I'm thinking of things like when you come across fly tipping. I know what you do when you have fly tipping. You go through what's found, don't you? I'm just interested to know when I saw that clause in there.
So our approach would always be to work with the tenant and to try and ensure that our where there are communal bins, that it's easy for tenants to use, to encourage them to use the bins first. That would be our approach before taking any kind of enforcement action. There is a project underway at the moment in the Waste Services team to encourage the use of recycling within communal bin areas, and we're hoping that that's going to improve the situation where people misuse bins. We have more instances where people are misusing bins and fly tipping because it's not easy for them to do so.
Can I just ask? I mean, obviously, I think everyone welcomes a document that's clear in plain English. I have gone through and think the lawful states the obvious, but I can accept that, and I need to understand the reason for that. But in addition to the consultation groups, or the consultative groups, my concern is always those that fall through the gap. So we have a consultative group which is fairly representative-ish, although there's still vacancies on it. So if anyone's watching and wants to be involved, please apply here. But how are we going to interact? Because it's probably the most important document you'll ever have if you're a council tenant. And there are likely to be hundreds of council tenants that are not going to get engaged. What are we doing to ensure that we've made the utmost effort to contact everybody via various means, because not everybody's needs are exactly the same?
So for the updated tenancy agreement, we have done an equality impact assessment, which has assessed where if there's any disproportionate impacts to any of the protected characteristics. But alongside that, I think as Appendix 3, there's a consultation plan, and contained within that consultation plan is an accessibility assessment, which is similar to an equality impact assessment, in the sense that we're checking to make sure that the way in which tenants can actually feed back through the consultation is fair, and that there isn't any disproportionate impact to them being able to do that. And where there has been identified some disproportionate impacts to those protected characteristics, we've identified mitigative actions. So where, for example, our preference is for it to be done online because of the efficiency, and in previous surveys that we've done, we've had a good response from online surveys, namely the tenant satisfaction survey being one. But where tenants are unable to or unwilling to do it online, we can provide paper copies which can be requested. In the letter, the preliminary notice of variation, we do actually state in there, or will state in there, that if they would like to do the consultation, respond to it in a different way, they can contact us. There'll be a contact number on there. There'll be an email address there also for them to get in touch with us. But also they can talk to us about any of the changes over the phone. So again, a number's there for them to call to discuss any concerns they might have. They will always be encouraged to formally feedback through the consultation process. But if it's easier for them to do that with someone over the phone, they can certainly do that. So there is that accessibility assessment within the consultation plan that does take into account any of those concerns.
Thanks. Can I just ask a question? On the phone, is that a direct line that will be answered pretty promptly, having spent many months trying to get through to HMRC? Because there's nothing more frustrating than saying there's a number. And you go, yeah, but there's no one at the other end of it. I mean, we've rounded that circle. So, I mean, if I phone up, I'm going to get to speak to somebody pretty quickly, am I?
So we've recently undertaken a restructure in the housing team, which has increased numbers in the customer services team. The number given will be directly through to customer services and they'll be able to help people at first point of contact.
Councillor Bouvier.
One final question. I just sort of wanted to know what sort of expected timeline for adopting the new tenancy agreement.
Yes, we're working towards the new tenancy agreements being in place by August. Yeah. Provided everything goes to plan, obviously.
Thanks very much. Any other points? No. So moved, please. It's been moved and it was seconded. Yeah. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Takes us on then to item 13, provision of interim housing.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. The report relates to the provision of interim housing and support for Afghan households who are helped by the government assistance programmes, and we're seeking Cabinet approval for an extension to the project to provide support via the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy, which is now known as the Afghan Relocations Programme funding stream, in addition to accepting funding from the government's local authority housing fund to acquire properties for Afghan relocations programme households and then later for general needs housing. Thank you. Any questions? Happy to take them.
Councillor Nee.
Thank you, Chair. It's a financial question rather than the are we doing the right thing, which I believe we are. The grant rate is remarkable. I haven't seen anything as close to that since the days of the Housing Corporation. Just in terms of cash flow, where it be, because one of our pressures on our capital is that whenever we invest in social housing, we've usually got a payback period of a number of years before it's a benefit to us. Where is the payback period on this?
Assume there's a question in relation to the purchase of the properties. Yes. The payback period will be assessed for each property that we identify at the time. It is normally between 2 to 6 years of payback, with surplus normally in year one.
Year one. That's remarkable.
Well, obviously, each time that we identify a property, will go through a full viability study and to be signed off by finance and the portfolio holder before progressing.
Any other questions on this? Is it moved? Moved by Councillor White. Seconded. Councillor Bouvier. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Takes us on then to item 14, Authority Monitoring Report 24/5 5-year land supply.
Thank you. Yes, Authority Monitoring Report and the 5-year land supply reports, they're published annually on the Council's website. They're reported to Cabinet for information purposes. The AMR, contains key statistics in respect of growth in the district related to the local plan policies and whether targets have been achieved. This report covers the period 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March 2025. And the AMR is broken down into chapters which reflect the local plan, and each of those chapters is published once the data is available. The full combined AMR can be found at Appendix 1 of this report. There's some key statistics from last year's AMR shown in paragraph 2.5 of the report, highlight good progress has been made with regards to, in particular, housing completions. There were 621 completions in that year. 43% of those were on local plan site allocations and 22% of them were affordable housing. As well as all those statistics contained in those chapters, the AMR also reviews progress in relation to production of planning policy documents agreed as part of the local development scheme and their timetables. As set out in paragraph 2.8 of the report, the government are proposing some changes to the plan making system, which seeks to remove supplementary planning documents from the system and replace them with supplementary plans, which will go through a different process of production. Therefore, any SPDs that are planned must be in place by the end of June this year, which affects some of the timetabling and the documents in that local development scheme. The chapter in the AMR sets out that position and also proposes that the affordable housing SPD will be identified as the priority SPD to progress before this deadline. The planning team will come back and update Cabinet on the revised planning system once the new legislation has been published, and then we can guide on how this impacts the other plan guidance documents and the plan making system as a whole. With regards to 5-year land supply, this is an assessment required by national policy to show that local planning authorities have enough land with permission for homes to meet 5 years worth of their annual target, including a buffer. The Council's 5-year requirement based on this method is a need for 3,208 homes, and the calculation in this report shows that we have 3,745 homes, equating to 5.8 years worth of housing land supply. This is very positive, and not only do we have 5 years supply, but our build out rates, going back to the AMR and recording those completions, also show we're meeting the government's housing delivery test. And therefore our local plan policies used to determine windfall planning applications have full weight, and the national presumption in favour of sustainable development does not apply to us. The full land supply report can be viewed at Appendix 2. The recommendation for Cabinet is to note the contents of both of these reports. Thank you.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Chair. A 5-year land supply means that we're in control of our destiny, and that really is quite important. Within that, there's a lot of outline planning permissions. Are we monitoring the outline planning permissions as and when they expire to make sure they're not still reported? Because there are several local authorities not too many miles from us who have been caught by developers challenging them on their 5-year land supply.
Yeah, we have a very precise methodology for the sites that we're including in our 5-year supply, and we have different tabs on the document that supports the main report. There's different tabs, and the outline consents are contained on a particular tab. There's some commentary then on whether we've included any of that outline, and it might be that we have chosen not to include any of that site in our calculations at all, and if we have, that's because there's some kind of reason justification. For example, a reserved matters application might already be in and being considered, and in which case we may have liaised with the developer about that and understand what their build out rate assumptions might be. So we take quite a practical approach to putting our assumptions in, and we wouldn't include any expired consents into our 5-year supply. We're looking at them in quite a lot of detail before we do that.
Thank you. That's a very robust 5-year land supply then. Thanks.
Okay. Any further questions, Councillor Biggs?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to note in terms of the key areas that you've outlined, which is the dwellings, the employment and tourism with the 3,000 additional commercial floor space, the design review panels we're doing. We seem to be ticking every box at the moment, which worries me a little bit, because obviously we seem to be in a really good place, and think, oh, well, there must be something else that's going to happen. So I'm really it makes me a little bit nervous that we're doing so well when we're previously build out rates, etc. in the district we've had problems. So I can only put it down to your professionalism and your competency to get on with the job. So I'm very pleased to propose this. But I guess on the other side of things, it's looking at the challenges of the proposed government changes to NPPF and how this is. And I know you probably can't ask. You're probably aware that we're all aware that those changes come down, and we don't quite know what they're going to be. And I think, are we looking at September or something that's going to be some changes? Is that what's proposed, or do we think that's realistically, and will that have an impact on, you know, what we're very encouragingly seeing such good progress at the moment? Thank you.
We're expecting the new plan making regulations to be published at the end of March, at which point we'll reflect on how that affects our plan making going forward. And in terms of the revised NPPF, that's currently out to consultation. We'll be responding to that consultation, and we expect that to be published sometime in the summer. So again, it's quite uncertain in terms of how that will impact us, depending upon what the final version says. So we'll have to reflect it at that time.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I'd just like to propose it, please.
That's been moved. Is that seconded? All those in favour? Thank you very much. That takes us then on to item 15, I think. Community safety plan.
Thank you, Chair. So over the last financial year, alongside our community safety partners, we've delivered a full strategic needs assessment, as well as a strategic needs executive summary. When reviewing those documents as a partnership, we've then drafted a community safety partnership plan, which highlights our 4 priorities and some of the background about those priorities, cross-referencing the strategic needs assessment as to why we're focusing on those, and some examples of some recent projects that we've delivered around those themes. Today we are seeking approval to sign off both those drafts, the executive summary and the community safety partnership plan, to then go ahead with our partners to build a action plan around those priorities to support those themes. One thing I'd like to draw your attention to is on page 14 there was a slight typo that reads increase. That should actually be decreased. We've obviously amended that on our version, but that might be different to what you're seeing today. Obviously that's a word we'd prefer to use around that crime type anyway. But of course we're happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much. That's all right.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to commend this to Cabinet. A lot of work has gone into it. It's been highly collaborative, as one would expect from our community safety partnership. There's been a robust review of the data, and we've produced an evidence-based strategy. It is done to fulfil our statutory requirements, but we produced targeted actions over 4 key priorities. What I would like to know, as this is a statutory requirement and we have built our strategy and our action plan, is there any external funding to assist us in this work to make our community even safer than it is? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so we agree that the overall sort of trend of the report is really promising, but obviously there are some gaps that as a partnership we'd like to feature in our action plan. To support some of that work, we mainly rely on the crime reduction grants, which is from the PCC, so the Police Crime and Commissioner. For example, in the report that you're seeing, when we talk about some of the work we've done, there's an array of projects there. For example, the Impact Fest, the Impact Roadshow that's funded through the PCC. We do use other opportunities to bring some other external funding. For example, we've got a Forward Futures project, which is around strategic outreach that, you know, to support some of our street drinkers, sort of away from that, and that is funded by Public Health England. So we are obviously using every opportunity and every funding opportunity to bring some funding and deliver those projects. The majority of it is of external projects is delivered by external funding, but obviously there is some aspects within the report which is sort of the core delivery of some of our partners and ourselves.
Thank you, Chair. Even though we've recorded a reduction in race hate crime, given that we've got a remarkably low percentage of our population who are from black and ethnic minorities, are they under siege? Are they in difficulty?
Thank you. In terms of the hate crime statistic, what we need to remember is where we sit within the county. Dover is always under the limelight with the crisis that we see, with our protests that we get on an annual basis, sometimes more than that, and a lot of the hate crime attributed to the district is related to those sort of incidents that take place. As we know, it's quite a political landscape in Dover for many, and that would also include instances of graffiti that are recorded as hate crimes. So yes, it's high. I would not put that down to local behaviour. That's more just the visitors that we get to the districts that have been involved previously, and those that work in isolated conditions just to obviously stir up hate. So we're working very closely with the community cohesion team at MHCLG, and obviously that's reflected in the plan with the funding that we previously had received last financial year that we distributed out to charities in the district to support community cohesion and try to counteract the mis and disinformation. Mr. Biggs.
Yeah, thank you for this. Obviously, as a ward councillor for Town and Castle, it's really I don't really know what to say. Really, it's real. I really appreciate the fact that you've highlighted it. There's so many problems in Town and Castle, and it's a real. It feels a real problem. But on the other, on the other side, it's really disappointing that obviously it is a real problem area, and I guess. I don't know what your comments were, but I guess the only way we can really look at this is the work you're doing to identify, where the problems are, so that we can make appropriate approaches to other agencies that can help us to actually tackle this, because it's an ongoing thing, and it's quite scary to see that hate crime, antisocial behaviour, weapons, etc. Town and Castle's a hotspot, and so. I thank you for all the work for that, but obviously we need, I don't know, we need to find some way of using that information to actually make a difference, because the information sitting on the page is fine, but somehow or other we need to get some action around that. So I don't know whether you've got any comments of what could be done in terms of furthering this case. Don't know. So it feels very difficult, and it feels very disappointing and tragic that we're in this position, but I don't know. I guess I'm looking, as a ward councillor, I'm looking for some help.
No, thank you. And coming back to Councillor Wright's question at the beginning around funding, what isn't detailed necessarily in the report in terms of what's going on at the moment is some great work. Lindsay's in the back in the shadows, but she is our community safety officer leading on this outreach project, which is focused predominantly in the town centre. Hot off the press this week, we received a certificate of excellence for the CAP project, the Community Alcohol Partnership Projects in Deal, which is brilliant for us. So we are trying our hardest to obviously focus on the real issues within the towns, not just in Dover, but Deal also. And coming back to the Town and Castle ward, Kent Police, obviously they're not here, but there's something they may raise at the scrutiny meeting next week at Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee, is they have received GRIP funding for the Town and Castle ward, which is basically a pot of money to put into projects and resources to try to tackle issues throughout the year. Obviously, historically, that's been used boots on the ground, so to speak.
which isn't effective in the long term because we have to deal with the ongoing issues, not just stick a plaster on it, particularly on the weekends, nighttime economy, etc. So there is other projects going on in the background. Obviously, in terms of Town and Castle, if we need to feed back to you individually around that and how we're getting on with that, brilliant. But as Elliot mentioned, the action plan that we hope to achieve from this, there'll be public facing as well. So as much as we'll have the internal action plan, we'll be feeding back on what we're doing across the whole districts, but predominantly in the Town and Castle ward, as we know it's high, we're quite keen to make sure that, you know, we feed back the projects and the successes of that as well. And moving on from that, as mentioned already, the Impact Festival was featured in Pencester last year. We were able to reach over 2,000 children at that event for one afternoon, which was brilliant, and we hope to see similar sort of figures again. But the early results, the assertive outreach programme, which again will be raised at scrutiny next week, are very promising, and it's something that obviously we'll reach out to as part of the monitoring to yourself, so you know how that's going. But we're quite positive, and there is opportunities out there, and we just need to rely on partners to support us with that.
Can I just, I mean, what is a drugs offence? Because I know some of the concerns I've got is that, you know, you got the violence against a person, a VAT offence. You know, I would be quite safe, I think, in saying that the increase in violence, some of that is drug fueled. But is that a drugs offence? And at the same time, we're seeing the number of drugs offences drop, but the amount of drug paraphernalia increase by something like 11%, which to me would either say they're either becoming very sloppy in dumping it, or there's actually an increase in reliance on drugs at the moment, which would be borne out by other government statistics, I know. So there's some stuff about the drugs bit that concerns me. I am really concerned with the rates of domestic violence, because, you know, it worries me that 43% of the cases are repeat cases. You know, that it's an horrendous statistic as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, I'm not sure what we can do as a council about it to any great extent. But, you know, I just think society needs to be aware that there are some real issues out there for us to get involved in. That was it regarding drugs. The other concern I really have, and it comes in the documentation at the end. I mean, obviously, and the council has raised the issue about Town and Castle, which is a hotspot for weapons, and I accept that's the town centre and whatever. But, you know, and there's some new initiatives, but, you know, some of the big government initiatives seem to have missed out on that ward and favoured others. But it's the number of offences that are carried out by youngsters, and I say youngsters because it seems to be predominantly youngsters, that, you know, where they've either been excluded or the attendance at school. There's you know, we see the direct correlation. And, you know, I sometimes, you know, and I can accept that some children you possibly want at school, but we see here quite clearly the consequence of exclusion and what that means to the greater population, where sometimes it may be easier for everybody to keep them in some form of education. But it's the drug stuff that concerns me, because the statistics I think are slightly flawed to some extent, but then it's some of the other observations more than questions, I think.
No, of course. In terms of the statistics, we have to bear in mind as well that we gain the data from the portal and the data that's available to us, without obviously being able to go through the full strategic needs assessment, which is in excess of 100 pages. There'll be some further detail on that that I can happily share. However, obviously what we need to remember as well, and this has been raised at our CSP exec meetings, is the drugs are changing. They're becoming more readily available. There's, you know, you just have to look at some of the local news articles over the summer in terms of what had happened in Pencester Park, for instance, around drug use. So it's quite a challenge keeping on top of that from a policing perspective. They make that very clear, but also around the legalities and the offences that can be committed with that. So in terms of how it's recorded, obviously they'll go through their counting rules and they'll make a decision on how crimes are recorded, whether they're drug related, etc. Ultimately, it's not something that's going away, and as much as there's lots of successes in the strategic needs assessment and the executive summary that we've provided, and most things are going down, clearly they have to react to that. again, it is a challenging item to tackle, and again with the use of projects such as the assertive outreach and the positive outcomes of the assertive outreach, drinks and drugs tend to come hand in hand on many occasions. So we're seeing some developments and trust being built with partners, particularly with the neighbourhood officers in the town centres, with our inherent drug users in the town centres, and with the participation in the assertive outreach programme, we are making some positive steps. However, that's a huge mountain to climb. We've got a long way to go, but we'll continue with the resources we've got available. But ultimately, enforcement's not the option. Most of the time, we have to look at other holistic methods to obviously try to tackle this issue, which we're trying to do. In terms of the weapons, again, I know there's been lots of changes around legislation and what's identified and what schools deal with and don't deal with, and we know that obviously weapons are quite a hot topic within the school environment, and we've seen that across the district as well. Obviously, we've done various initiatives with the schools, like the Impact Roadshow, where we go around and sort of educate on various topics, weapons being one of them, as well as extremism and various others. But Lindsay's done a great project as well with schools, where we get a commando chef in to do some cooking with pupils. They get really involved with that. They learn about knife crime, and it's first-hand experience off of the commando about his time growing up around weapons and drugs. So we're trying what we can to try to engage with youngsters, but as you can imagine, with the power of social media, that is very difficult. But we've got all these projects that we do evidence in our plan, and we'll continue to as we give updates in our action plan.
Just briefly, just to follow up on that, I think Dave's covered a lot of the points there, but just to add, for example, with the youth, our roadshow for the last couple of years, we started going to the PRU, so pupil referral units. I know that you've spoken at one already, Councillor Mills, when we've attended, and I think what we've done is we've really listened to some of the schools there to say, yes, you're obviously capturing our pupils, but as you picked up, there is a handful of pupils that, you know, do have to leave that school system and do end up at one of the PRUs. The Elms was one of the schools that we went to for the first time last year, and we're obviously really excited to bring a more succinct version to those schools as well. So we are listening. Obviously, with the Impact Festival is another opportunity to catch some people that aren't in those school environments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The resolution has been passed to exclude the press and public. I'd like to thank all those that have taken the time to watch the public part of the meeting. Please could I ask Democratic Services to end the meeting broadcast to confirm when this has been done.